Welcome to Coffee with Bible and Pop Culture. There is a space for everyone at this table. We are here to ask hard questions, to have honest conversations, and to journey together. We're here to talk about the things that matter most to us and to remind you that you're not alone. Our heart behind this time is to ask hard questions and to really dialogue about what we're going through. Let's engage, explore, and enjoy. Hey, Bible and pop culture. Ohana, this is Sabbath, and I am joined by our Coffee with Bible and Pop Culture guest, Latasha Davidson, who is all the way in Germany.
Yes.
Good morning to you.
Yes. Good evening to you.
Yeah, I'm ending my Friday night here in Hawaii, and you are starting your weekend Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. There's Mia.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Latasha is a violence and suicide prevention expert, and today we're going to talk a little bit about those issues, which are not light by any means, but a necessary conversation to
Absolutely.
be. And we're going to talk about gratitude as we, walk into Thanksgiving week and the year that we've all had, and what a time.
What a year. Absolutely. What a year.
So before we kind of get started into those topics, Latasha, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Maybe where you're from, where you are now, and what your background is.
Okay. Well, I am excited to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation and count it a pleasure to be able to join with you and the Bible and pop culture community. I am a native of Cleburne, Texas. I know you probably have never heard of it. It's a small town about 30 miles south of Fort Worth, Texas. And I have traveled around for a number of years with my job and find myself right now living in Germany, as you mentioned, where I do work for the Department of Defense in the arena of suicide and violence prevention. I'm also a PhD candidate right now, getting ready to start my research. I'm so excited about this part of the journey, start my research, where I'm taking a closer look at suicide and women and feelings of belonging in community. And so I'm hoping that the findings from that research will help us generate targeted prevention efforts for women. So, and then we can translate it into other groups later, but my primary focus for the research is for women. So that's me.
Yeah, wow. I'm excited to see where that takes you and what you're going to just pour into the communities that you're a part of. It's such a needed and powerful conversation. Thank you, and keep going.
Absolutely.
Not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing when you talk about how the Lord shifts your life and finds and puts you where you need to be, because we can talk about Mia Burke, who is just one of my sisters for life. We've been friends over 20 some odd years, and we would sit and have our coffee and conversations on Saturday mornings for hours. And it's just amazing how out of some of those conversations, my life has taken a trajectory that I never would have thought, but yeah.
Oh, I love that. And actually what's interesting is we have a connection that way. So for those of you who are watching, Mia Burke is our curator and the leader of our tribe for Bible and pop culture. And I think that you guys both attended church at Capital Christian Center in Olympia, Washington, which is so crazy because I grew up in that church. And when you told me that, I was like, you're kidding me. You got to be kidding. So I was there. Yeah. So
We did. It was amazing. As I mentioned, we've been friends for forever, and we were actually stationed here in Germany together years ago. And then when I moved to Washington, I was only there like 2 months, and Mia called and said, "We're on our way. We're coming too." So I was excited for that season. We were able to be together for a little over a year, just fellowshipping and spending time together, and really a God ordained season for us to reconnect and be together. So I'm thankful for that. And Capital Christian was part of that journey, part of that season, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, that's so great. Well, she's here. Mia's here. Ayla says, "Hi, Miss Tasha," and my mom. Yeah. Staying up late, Pastor Bet.
I know, they're staying up late. I'm so glad to see you guys.
Well, we're going to jump in. So like I mentioned, we're going to talk about gratitude in this season, but not just, gratitude. We wanted to get kind of on a deeper level about what it means to really dig in and find the things that we can be grateful for in the midst of this year that we've had. 2020 has just been crazy. So I wanted to ask you, how can we be intentional about gratitude, like in the deep places of our hearts? The work that you do, is in the deep places of people's hearts. Yeah. How do we find intentionality in that space?
When we start talking about the heart, we don't fully know everything about the heart. So what I can say is that what has happened, what has worked for me in this season and in this year is grabbing hold of the small things, the little things that happen. We've got so many big things going on with the pandemic, with our whole cultural environment and things that are going on. But if we can grab hold of the small things, and whatever that might be, if it's hugging your children a little closer at night, if it's having a conversation and looking at someone's smiling face on a video chat, whatever that is, we have to be intentional about grabbing hold of the small things, because that's sometimes where God speaks, is in those small things. It's not always the big move that happens. The Bible teaches us that we can hear him in a still small voice. So grabbing hold of those small things really will help us cultivate that in our heart, cultivate gratitude in our heart.
That's so good. I'm laughing inside because I have small kids. I'm a mom of 4. And so I've been trying to be more intentional in that space too. And I was just thinking, it's not always a still small voice. It's like this loud voice yelling at you. But it is those small moments and those little
Yeah. I know it can probably feel like a loud, like, sit down, Sabbath, and rest and take a moment. Sit down for just a second, step away from the kiddos for 1 second and take a moment. So I'm sure it can feel like that, but if you're not being intentional about listening, we can even miss that and just hurry on and rush past it. So
yeah, that's so good. Can you share with us what you've experienced as far as how gratitude can impact our perspectives and our attitudes?
Absolutely. Yeah, when we have an attitude where we lack gratitude, we are functioning, in my belief, we are functioning in a posture of scarcity. When we look at things from a lack of gratitude, we're focusing on the things that we don't have, where we don't serve a God who functions in scarcity. He functions in abundance. So as we shift our perspective to one of looking at the small things, trying to see his hand and his presence in everything, that shifts our perspective from one of scarcity to one of abundance. And that's part of my training that I do when we talk about resilience and suicide prevention and violence prevention, is shifting that perspective so that we can see things from a position of abundance. And when we do that, it helps our overall well-being, it helps our efficacy, it helps our mental capacity to be able to see things through a different lens. So from scarcity to abundance is what we've got to focus on.
And I guess the way to do that is what you mentioned, like recognizing the small things.
Yeah, we got to recognize the small things. Um, I know this week, it was one of those weeks for me where I was just busy, busy, busy. I had a number of presentations, I had a number of deadlines that I needed to meet. And it was interesting. One of the presentations, I'd never spoken for this group before. So I went into the space, and when I walked in, Sabbath, wasn't a group of people. There were two or three folks with a computer and a big boom mic for me to speak into. And I got a little nervous. I said, okay, Lord, I'm used to speaking in front of groups and getting the energy and the synergy from those folks. And so now here I am in this environment. Well, presentation went fine, went well. But as I got in my car, I found myself sitting there and I said, Lord, I just thank you for that opportunity. I thank you for the gifting to even be able to shift. So in that moment, just focusing on not my lack of experience, not my lack of confidence, but focusing on the God in me and my ability and his ability to move through me in that moment.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Not focusing on your inexperience, because especially in this year, I mean, who is experienced in what we're going through? you know?
Nobody, no one is. No
Yeah,
one is.
I love that.
Yeah.
Um, so we wanted to just kind of talk also about like how do we think that Jesus cultivated gratitude? Um, we're far
Yeah.
removed from the space that he lived in and the culture and what was happening in the world around us, but we can definitely see his call to a life
Mm,
of gratitude. And I
mm,
think not just in an attitude, but like an obedience,
yeah.
an action
Yeah.
in a relationship.
Ah,
It's kind of what drove, especially back then, their relationships were based on
mm,
a gratitude for the patron and a gratitude for their deliverance. And so we kind of wanted to just talk about that. Like, what do you see from Jesus about gratitude?
mm. When I think about Jesus and coming from a posture of gratitude, it was always based upon his willingness to seek to please the Father.
Mm,
So when we come from a posture of gratitude in our lives, if we can again shift that it's not about us, it's not about what we can bring to the table. It's about Christ in us. It's about our relationship with the Father, wanting to reveal his glory in the earth. So when I look at Jesus's life and everything that he did, it was all from that posture of I want to please the Father. I want to please him, not my will, but your will be done. So that's what how I think that he fostered gratitude was just in knowing that he was sent here for a purpose. There was a reason that he was here. So as he walked in that purpose and moved in all that he was created, that he was sent here to do, then he functioned in a posture of gratitude.
yeah, I love that. Um, and I guess like for coming from the military, background and world that you live in, we just read. My husband and I just read my mission, the mission, my men and me. I think that's
Mm.
the book. And I don't know,
Yeah.
I just
Oh,
thought about that as we were talking
yeah.
about Jesus, like he was there on a mission, and
Yeah.
he made sure that was always in front of him, and he was made sure that his men were taken care of,
Yeah.
and that he was doing what he needed to do. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's so good.
Yeah. Doing what he
Um,
needed to do. Absolutely. Yeah.
well, we wanted to also jump in, like as we dig into the topics of suicide and violence prevention. um, how do we're talking about gratitude, how do we cultivate that when things are really dark in our
Mhm.
like there's just no light, like
Yeah.
what is it? What does it look like? I mean, is it possible? Is it possible, or maybe it's not? Maybe there's something else to focus on in that space.
Yeah. I think you hit it at the top of our discussion when you talk about intentionality and we have to be very self-aware. If we find ourselves in a posture where we are in that dark place or in that place of feeling like we can't pull ourselves up, we do have to have the strength and the courage to reach out for support, to reach out for help. We were not created to be alone. We were created to live and thrive in community and relationship with other people. And so that's one of the things that I really focus on when we're working with individuals. Trying to help them move out of suicidal ideation is focusing on community. We also focus on community at large, reaching out, checking on one another, making sure that people are engaged. So if someone finds themselves in that posture where they feel like they just can't pull themselves up, we are hoping that they will find the strength and the courage to reach out to that one person that they have a connection with, that one person that they have a relationship with, that can help support them in that time. Yeah. Mhm.
I was just thinking, you never really know if you're that one, right? So,
Yeah, yeah. And that's one of the things that we talk about. If you're that one for somebody else, and that's why it's so important that we have conversation. That's why it's important that we connect and we talk. I like to say a lot of times we're all on this spectrum. And I do my hands go like this way, do my hands like this. We're on this spectrum, and we all have these significant life events. We have things that go on. So, for example, one of the highest reasons, risk factors, I guess I should say, with suicide is relationship issues. Folks go through a bad breakup, they go through a divorce, and now they no longer want to live because they don't have that person in their life. So we're on this spectrum. And so how do you know if someone's on this side where they break up and they say, I'm good. There's other fish in the sea. I'm all right. I can handle it. I'm good. Or if they're on this side of the spectrum where they no longer want to live without that other person in their life. So that's, we don't know. So we have to have conversations. We have to talk to individuals to be able to recognize, and this might be getting into some of our other talking points,
yes,
but to recognize signs, recognize differences in behavior, recognize one of the top ones, differences in substance use. Maybe they're drinking a little bit more heavily, not just a glass of wine at dinner or something like that. It's turned into a little bit more of a habitual pattern. So we have to talk to each other and know those that we are in community with and in association with. Yeah.
that's really good. Yeah, that was one of the questions that we had is, like, what are the unseen common signs to look for when we begin to be concerned for a loved one that, is struggling with the suicidal thoughts. So you said, substance abuse. Is there any other things that we can be looking for, like if we're concerned about somebody in our community, or um,
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about right now is empowering family members and empowering those that are in fellowship and relationship with other people, because the people that we are in relationship with are the first ones to usually recognize any signs of distress, any signs that something is not quite right. So again, if we have that relationship, we can see like a small behavior change that may not be recognized by somebody on the outside. But if we're close to this person, it's something we can recognize. Maybe they're a little bit more agitated, and it's not just a brief moment of stress, it's something that's continual. Maybe they are a little bit more depressed and sad, and it's hard to get them out of the house or engage in activities and things that they used to like. So those are kind of the unseen things. It's not these blaring with the red lights booming that, hey, I'm having trouble. It's just these small, subtle things. And one of the things with suicide that we have to remember too is there is still this factor of impulsivity. A lot of suicides occur with impulsive behavior. Uh, that one of the campaigns that I work with is a campaign that looks at firearms and medications and how those are stored in the home, and making sure that we try to store those things if we can, especially with firearms, in a locked safe, in a locked box outside of the home. Because research does show if we can give like a 5-minute breather from the time a person has an ideation of dying by suicide until they actually make an attempt, then we can save a life. Because most times, if a person can't get to that first option, if it were a firearm, they're not going to just shift and, okay, well, now I'm going to go do something else. So if we can bring that buffer, it does make a huge, huge difference. So, I know that kind of went off a little bit from subtle signs.
We need to talk
I'm very passionate about empowering loved ones and folks close to individuals to recognize signs.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, because we need to hear it. That's powerful. 5 minutes, a 5-minute buffer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Can save a life. Yeah. 60 to 70% of suicides are with firearms. So that is one of the very high risk categories, are folks that have that access to firearms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there questions that we can ask, or like, how do we start a conversation about being concerned about somebody who is moving towards suicide, or is struggling with violence in their home?
Yeah, we have to ask the question directly. And I know that sounds like just a quick little answer, but when it comes to suicide, when it comes to folks being affected by child maltreatment or domestic violence or any of those forms of interpersonal violence, we have to ask the question directly. So specifically with suicide, we can ease into it, but we have to make sure that by the end of that conversation, that person understands exactly what we're asking them. An example might be if a person were having, if they were withdrawn and they were pulling away from family, pulling away from friends, not engaging in activities. That could be the segue to the conversation, is that I've noticed that, you haven't been coming out to play soccer. I've noticed you haven't, wanted to come out and be with our social group, or you haven't joined in this environment, you haven't joined any of our virtual platforms that we've been trying to meet up on. And I'm concerned about you. And talk through that conversation, but then just asking the question directly: are you contemplating suicide? Are you contemplating harming yourself or dying by suicide? And asking it directly. It has to be a very direct question, because folks that are having suicidal ideation are sometimes not as honest and open. Of course, they know how to mask it. So sometimes if we ask the question, are you thinking of harming yourself? Are you thinking of hurting yourself? They could go into this posture of, no, I'm not going to hurt myself. It's not going to hurt. I'm not going to hurt myself. So we have to be direct in that question when we ask them, are you contemplating suicide? Have you had thoughts of suicide? And we have to be ready for their response, ready to receive that response when they tell us that maybe they have had suicidal ideation. And so, just for an example, if someone did say, you know what, I have thought about it. I have just thought, I just want to go to sleep and not wake up. I have had these thoughts. If that person has had those kind of thoughts, then that next question would be, do you have a plan? Because we want to see at that point, are they having thoughts, which a high percentage of folks do. A very high percentage of individuals have those fleeting thoughts. But have they moved over into the realm of having a plan? So if they, oh no, I haven't had a plan. I just thought, I just wanted to sleep and not wake up. But if they say, yeah, I've thought about I'm going to take every bottle of, every pill in the medicine cabinet, then now we know we need to get them some support and some help, and we need to stay with them through that.
Yeah.
I know it's a difficult discussion, but necessary. Necessary.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for, I mean, even just, having the courage to say, like, ask the question directly. And it's something, that's so real. And if we don't have a plan on how to walk alongside the people in our communities, then, it's not going to be helpful. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, asking that question, being ready for the answer. I like to tell folks, just practice it. Practice it in the mirror. Practice asking the question in the mirror. What does that look like? What does it feel like to you to ask somebody, are you contemplating dying by suicide? Are you okay? What's going on with you? How can I support? Just being that person there for them. And again, being prepared for that answer and not leaving them alone. That's where the rubber meets the road. Is we could have these things going on in our community and folks around us. And so when we do engage, being willing to continue to stay engaged, not just dropping them off at the emergency department or whatever, and they never see us again. We have to be willing to stay engaged.
And do you stay beyond what you're asked? I mean, so I've experienced suicide within some communities that I've been a part of and within my family. So it's interesting to just think about, like, how long do you stay, and what if they're pushing you away? At one point, do you figure out, is that, like, maybe you're not strong enough to be that person? What happens next after that?
Right. And that's why we have community. That's why there's different ways that we can respond to somebody. Maybe it's not that you're strong enough or you feel competent enough to be there with that person. But if you know community resources, if you know other people that they may be a little bit more comfortable with, that's part of it, is having a community of support that you can reach out and ask for assistance. And if someone finds themselves in a situation where someone is saying, no, I'm not contemplating dying by suicide, I'm not, there are mechanisms in communities where we can have folks go by and do a wellness check. We can have our medical professionals go by and check and make sure that people are doing okay. So it's not necessarily that you have to overstay your welcome, which, if we're going to talk to Miss Tasha, I say I'll overstay my welcome. I'm gonna sit right here on this couch. You can go do what you need to do, but I'm not leaving you right now. I'm just not. So, but if you find yourself in that type of a situation, it's called delegating that responsibility to somebody else. We can be very direct in our approach and ask the question and be that person to engage. But if we are not the person to stay there and be with them the whole time, we can delegate that responsibility to somebody else.
That's good. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna switch a little bit towards the violence prevention side of it. Can you just, like, define for us violence as it relates to the work, like, that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. When I talk about violence, it's from an interpersonal and self-directed. So interpersonal violence is how we hurt each other. That's the stuff, we hear about: the domestic violence, the child maltreatment, bullying, stalking, all of that kind of behavior where one person is harming another. And then we have the self-directed violence, which is the suicide that we're talking about. And so just my baseline definition is where somebody uses their words, their actions, or their power to intentionally harm somebody else, their words, their actions, or their power. Because it's not always that someone's putting their hands on somebody. It could be their words. It could be in the form of sexual harassment, where there's a look, there's a gesture, there's something that doesn't, their physical being isn't in proximity with that other person, but their words, their actions have definitely made an impact. So words, actions, or power, because a lot of times in work environments and in different communities, and dare I say in our churches sometimes, we have seen where folks use their power in a negative way to harm somebody else. So yeah, words, power, action. Yeah.
So is it going back to, do we just ask directly if we're concerned about that?
Asking who, a perpetrator or
I guess maybe somebody who we feel like is on the receiving end of that, somebody who is being impacted by somebody's words or actions or power in a negative way.
Yeah, absolutely. That you're going to always hear from me asking a question directly. What we see a lot of times, especially with sexual assault victims, they may have experienced a sexual assault. And so now, again, those same symptoms of withdrawing, not wanting to be close to people, being skittish, which makes it a little bit difficult in this virtual environment that we're functioning in right now, makes it a little bit difficult to observe those things. But I always tell people, depending on which audience I'm talking to, with this audience, I can say we have Holy Spirit and we know when something just doesn't feel right. In different areas, I might tell them, in your gut, when something just doesn't feel right. So always going with that and asking the question directly. If it's someone, and it doesn't have to be, especially in a domestic violence, sexual assault, child maltreatment, we don't know what's going on in families or, behind closed doors. We don't know what's happened, but it's never a problem to approach someone and just say, I'm concerned. I've noticed these particular things and it's different from what I know about you. So can we talk about that just a little bit? What's going on with you? And I'm giving them an opportunity to talk. So direct question. Yes, ma'am.
So good. I might be encouraged in my heart. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I have the courage to do that.
Amen. That's I want to encourage. I mean, it's as I mentioned, if you'd asked me 3 years ago if I would be, well, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, if this would be the realm that I would be working in, I would have never thought suicide, violence. Oh no, oh no, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. But it's amazing how the Lord not only will use personal experiences, but then He will equip you and empower you to encourage others and make a difference in the kingdom. And so I've often talked, y'all hear me talk about Mia, and I know she's your curator and you're the leader of this team, but she's had such a profound impact on my life as far as speaking in my life about purpose and what she sees, that God can do with me. And it's been amazing just to see this journey. So I'm thankful that you're encouraged, because that's what I want. I want us to be encouraged and know that even with these things going on in our community, all is not lost. God is still sovereign, and He can empower each and every one of us to make a difference in somebody else's life. Absolutely.
Amen. Absolutely. That's a perfect, there's a question in here that Mia asked, and it was in the beginning of our talk, but I think it's a perfect way to kind of circle back and kind of round out the conversation. So her question was, what are some practical steps to take to get out of the way? That it's not about us. It's not about whether or not I have enough courage to ask a direct conversation, even in that situation. So how do we get out of the way to live into our purpose for what God has for us?
That's a good one. That's a good question. What I would say, uh, I can talk about my lived experience as far as getting out of the way, is coming to the Lord in a posture of surrender. And that is not always easy to do. I know there's been, we can all probably attest to situations where, well, Lord, I'm going to give it to you. I'm done with it. I'm not going back. But truly having a real sit down conversation with the Lord, that I surrender my will, the same as Jesus did, to your will, God. I'll never forget when I sat and I had that conversation with the Lord, and I just said, I'm here. You brought me here for a reason. Life has shifted and turned and curved in ways that I never would have thought were going to happen. But this is your life. You get the glory. You get the honor. So whatever it is that you want to do. So that first practical step, I think, is recognizing that we are here, recognizing that I do have a purpose. And if I don't know what that is, spending time with the Lord to where he will guide you into that purpose. And I'm truly a witness that that will happen. So that's the number one practical thing. And then once you do start hearing, well, maybe I should go this way. Maybe this is something that I should do, or you're drawn or you're led to do something. Acting on that, moving, I'll never forget. It was when I was in Washington, actually, and I would always just feel this strong drawing just to go walk around the hospital there in Lacey and pray for people. Just walk around and pray. And I'll never forget the first time I did that. I felt so silly. I'm like, Lord, I don't know these people. I'm just walking around the hospital. Yeah, I pray for you. And just, walking around. But as I began to do that, it was all about posture of encouraging, showing love, letting folks know that even though whatever's going on, if you're sitting in this emergency room waiting to be seen, that God is here. And there were a couple of times even that I would walk around and I was like, Lord, nobody's here. Nobody. And so I would just sit and just pray for people as they walked past. So that was the beginning of me having a heart of servitude, that God, just use me however you want to use me. So practical, taking the time to surrender, sit down, really, really hear from him. And then when he does start to lead you, taking steps in that direction. And he'll let you know if that ain't what you're supposed to be doing. You'll know. But really, those are the two practical things that I can think of.
I love that, especially as we're moving into like a holiday season. Next week is Thanksgiving, so kids are out of school. Well, they're not logging into their
yeah.
And and so it's a kind of hopefully a space where we can get face to face first with the Lord and say, like, what do you want me to do? And I know for me, especially in this season, I've written it down, like really practical personal mission statement that I read over every morning, and it just reminds me, like, this is it, and this is why. And then as we move towards holidays and we're more intentional about the relationships that are closest to us, hopefully after this conversation and listening to this, we can have, courage to ask hard questions and be very direct if we need to be, and know that, it's not just about us, but it's about the community that we've been placed in. And, and these issues are very real within every community. There's no community that this hasn't touched. So thank you Thank you so much for having this conversation and for giving us practical steps and for spending your Saturday morning.
Yeah, thank you for staying up late. I thank all those that stayed up late to encourage and support the conversation. I've had a good time. I've enjoyed talking to you. I really have. So I appreciate
I
this.
know, I wish we could just keep talking.
I know. It's a lot to talk about.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
again so much, Latasha, for your time and your expertise and your heart. Um, we didn't actually ask for any questions from the comments. I mean, I forgot to say like if you have any questions. So thanks for asking them. And this is going to live on our Facebook page at Bible and Pop Culture. So if you're watching it later and you want to engage in the conversation, that's really what we're all about here. Is depending on how the light is shining on a gem is what you see is just a little part, and we just keep turning and turning and turning that gem, and our perspectives shift a little bit more, and we can talk about things that are uncomfortable, or we can talk about things that pique our interest, and so that's what we're here for at Bible and Pop Culture, is to start the conversation and keep it going, and um, within our community itself and the communities that God has placed us in. So yeah, if you're watching later and you have a question, reach out to us. And yeah, if you want to connect with Latasha, we can maybe do that.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely, absolutely. I think you all tagged me in some of your in some of the postings and stuff.
yeah,
So please feel free to reach out. No problem.
yeah, great. Well, thank you so much again. And to everyone who stayed up late to join us and be with us live, thank you guys. And we will talk to you all soon. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.